Good morning, everyone. As you may be aware, that Shri Kuljit Popli, Secretary General, India Energy Forum, and former CMD REDA, passed away on 17th April. He had boarded a flight on 17th morning and felt uneasiness after boarding. He was deboarded and transported to the hospital, but could not be saved. He has contributed immensely to the development of the renewable energies in the country. Before proceeding with today's program, I propose that we may observe 1 minute silence in his memory and pray to the Almighty to grant eternal peace to the departed soul. Thank you and welcome to the webinar on the capacity market for India. Grid India has recently published a study on generation resource adequacy for the country for the year 2025-26. The results of the study are scary, and it shows that the reliability of supply in the grid is alarmingly low, particularly during the months from April to August. The criteria for reliability are loss of load probability, or in short, what we call LOLP, and normalized energy not served, NENS. LOLP is the probability that a system will fail to meet its peak demand under specified operating conditions. And normalized energy not served is the expected amount of energy that system will be unable to supply as fraction of the total energy requirement. CA in the National Electricity Plan 2023 has adopted the reliability criteria of LOLP of 0.2 and normalized energy not served is 0.05. The study, India study shows that during the year 2025-26, we will have maximum LOLP, various 1,000 scenarios were studied, and the maximum LOLP 18.3%, minimum 4.8, and energy not served 1.07 is the maximum, minimum is 0.12. All these figures are big multiple of the planned figures and show that the grid will be operating at low standards of security. And the results also show that the DISCOMs have not tied up adequate capacity for a secure and reliable supply. It seems that the distribution companies are elected to enter into a long-term contract spanning 25 years to meet their capacity requirement to satisfy the risk. Today, we have energy-only market, short-term market. The situation as anticipated during 25-26 cannot be handled through the short-term market. In this background, we thought that we should organize a webinar on capacity market in India. The proposal to introduce capacity market has been under consideration for quite some time. Capacity markets have been under operation in various advanced countries. And the market mechanism, each country has devised its own market mechanism according to its own need. And the market regulations have been revised and reviewed from time to time based on the experience gained. For example, UK capacity market is a mechanism designed to ensure that there is sufficient reliable electricity supply during the period of high demand of system stress, such as cold weather or low renewable energy generation. Capacity auctions there take place 4 years in advance and 1 year ahead of the year in which capacity must be delivered. Contracts are tenure varying from 1 year to 15 years. 15-year contract is awarded to a capacity provider which sets up a new generation capacity. The capacity is procured centrally and then it's allocated to the suppliers according to a formula. The monthly capacity payments are made to the capacity providers to make available the generation capacity when needed to ensure reliability. It's a sort of insurance for a secured grid. Capacity providers face penalties if they fail to deliver energy when needed. And schedule to deliver energy is provided to the capacity provider at least 4 hours in advance. Contracts which are given 4 years or 1 year in advance gives certainty of future revenue to the capacity provider. Capacities agreement have been signed to a diverse mix of energy technologies, including significant amounts of flexible and smart technologies such as demand side response and batteries. In this manner, capacity market has brought forward investment in the country. Capacity market operates alongside the electricity market and existing national grid ESU contracts to ensure moment-to-moment balancing of the electricity system. India will have to devise its own capacity market mechanism specific to its own need. Today, we have invited 4 experts from whom we expect to hear why we need a capacity market in the country and what should be the broad framework which will ensure, number one, sufficient investment, ensure most efficient level of capacity is procured, and including the flexible and smart technologies, and it also complements our decarbonization agenda. Our speakers today are Mr. Shri Alok Kumar, Director, Lantau Group, now also Director General of newly formed Association of Discoms, and former Secretary Power. He's also our chief guest of this event today. Shri Ajay Telegaonkar, Member E&C CA, Dr. S.K. Chatterjee, Chief Regulatory Affairs. He'll join the webinar shortly. And Shri Rohit Bajaj, Joint Managing Director, IEF. I thank all the speakers who have accepted our invitation. I now request Mr. R.V. Shai, our President, to give his presidential address.
Thank you, Rakesh, for a very comprehensive introduction to the subject, which is very important. In fact, the issue of market structure has been an evolving issue, and we have been struggling. The Regulatory Commission is struggling, Power Ministry is struggling, CEA is struggling, everybody is struggling. What should be the dynamic nature of the market already developed, and in what way we should further have a matured power market. And this is because of the unique nature of this industry. In the beginning, we were asking the financial world that why is it that they want to have PPA for everything? And the whole issue was you should have PPA because the banking sector, the financial sector was not certain about the payment mechanism, about the dispatch, and therefore you are constrained by their considerations, and their considerations were also not invalid. They were valid concerns. Even today, these are valid concerns. So therefore, there is nothing like an ideal market structure. Every country evolves its market, but there is something that, yes, if it is power industry, it follows certain things, but the uniqueness and the features that exist in different societies, in different countries, will definitely determine what the market structure will be there. In the last few years, a number of discussion papers have emanated from the Regulatory Commission. One such was coupling of the market coupling. And I had the occasion and the privilege of being part of that advisory group of Regulatory Commission, and we gave our views. Now, it could sometimes become a matter of semantic. What we are talking, is it a matter of semantic? Is it a matter of a new phrase? Or it is a substantial issue? So far as Indian power market is concerned, in fact, all of us have been quite worried that despite our desire that larger quantum of electricity should get into market-driven phenomenon than PPA-driven phenomenon. In spite of our desire, I think we have not succeeded in more than 10% or so, maybe 10% plus minus, to be the market driven. And most of it is the power purchase agreement driven. And when it is power purchase driven transaction, that determines more or less predominantly the structure that we have. And what is power purchase agreement driven market structure? Leaving aside the renewables, which have come in a big way in our profile recently, most of the thermal, almost all of the thermal and hydro power capacities, the power purchase agreement is what we're talking actually, is a capacity driven. As late as 2002-03, when I came to the ministry, NTPC had reservation about availability-based tariff. And the then chairman has a strong reservation, and then we had to persuade him to get into the line to implement something which has been very nicely done. But what is that actually? That is that you are not completely driven by the electricity, but you are also driven by the payment which is associated with the capacity, availability of the capacity. And the power purchase agreements go to the extent of deciding that if you have declared this is the capacity available for your customer, and sometimes it is checked, and if it is not available, you are having a commercial implication, you are having a punishment for that. So therefore, as of today, our market, our power market is heavily driven by thermal and hydro. And thermal and hydro largely, almost 90% you can say, 85 to 90% or even more, is driven by capacity. I mean, you have hooked up a capacity. Different, when we were doing ultra mega project, we were trying to say which state will have what capacity, and corresponding the electricity will be given to them depending on the dispatch that they desire. So this has evolved. This has evolved. And as I said, that all of us, professionals, bureaucrats, technicals, everybody, we have been thinking that why is it that we are hooked up to the capacity? It should be electricity market. It should be open market, market driven. In that context, first I took some time to understand these draft papers. What is our concern? Our concern is that one concern has been, and in most discussions we have heard, that why are we not going beyond 8 to 10% on the market, rather than getting hooked up to the PPA. And so much so, our electricity distribution companies, the state government controlled discoms, and discoms which have become more knowledgeable about the subject as compared to many discoms which are not as knowledgeable or as not enthusiastic about understanding these issues. Many of them started saying, why should I do PPA? This came. Some of them say that now the capacity is there, PPA is not there. So I started thinking, because all of us were saying, let it be market driven, let it be market driven. And when they started seeing that they can, from time to time, they can decide their procurement approach, the procurement strategy in a manner that reduce their procurement cost, because procurement cost is an important component of the tariff. So therefore, the one desire has been get away from this and give us electricity, we pay you. And that desire has remained unfulfilled in a way. And it has become a matter of concern. Why it is not working? Is it our policy that is not working? In the Electricity Act, we provided open access. Open access has been successfully defeated. Open access was one way to get away from this industry or commercial and others, 1 megawatt and above. And later on, this act is not limited to 1 megawatt. 5 year time was given to the regulatory commissions to ensure that 1 megawatt and above, they have a choice. They have a choice to get away from this type of thing, and they have a choice to make their arrangement. But more or less, that has not succeeded at all. And that is a regulatory failure, completely regulatory failure. I remember the discussion in the parliament, people were saying this provision was not there. We amended. We amended the act. It was totally left to the Regulatory Commission. And many of the parliamentarians, if you read the debate, they were saying, what if the Regulatory Commissions never do it? And we were saying, no, they will do it. They were saying, no, we don't believe they will ever do it. Put a condition. And we came within few months of an amendment to the act that, yes, within 5 years, they should do it. And how predictive and how true these parliamentarians were. Their concern has proved to be a genuine concern. At that time, I was saying, sir, I was taking pains to explain to them that this will happen, and this has not happened. So therefore, market-driven structure is in the act. There are many things in the act. There are many things in the policies. 2006, when we were preparing the first compendium of all our policies, acts, legislations, and the policies, we said 15% merchant capacity. Merchant capacity. There is a circular which we have issued that even there should be some priority, some allocation for the merchant plants for the fuel, for the coal. So therefore, we desire that 15% should be the merchant capacity. So I think desire of the sector has been that you should be market driven. Now, it is in that context one has to see. I was thinking, because I wanted to be sympathetic to this document, that is this document laying too much of a stress on capacity planning and on a capacity market, deviating from the desire that we have been having and never fulfilled. So, but that's this subject we must discuss. What is it that behind our mind? The only answer that I got that perhaps in the renewables, there are difficulties. In the renewables, if the renewable becomes 500 gigawatt of solar and wind and 700 gigawatt of solar and wind, this is a one-part tariff. There is nothing like capacity. It is all linked to electricity. You give so much a megawatt hour or kilowatt hour, you get the payment. That is it. And if dispatches are not there, so there could be one concern. That concern I can feel that if they are not asked for dispatch, how they will be taking care of their commercial. So it's a matter of commercial issues. Finance banks might get concerned about this if the capacity becomes higher. So I think let us discuss this with an open mind. That are we trying to get away, take electricity out of the general track that we have been following and allow it the market to develop, or we are really trying to put too much emphasis on the capacity-based payment? Of course, it could be our desire, it could be desire of professionals, it could be desire of our people, but you have also to consider what the banking sector feels about this. The banking sector, because whatever structure we say, it is one element of market structure, or an important element of market structure. I don't think we have saturated the market on the other side, the market driven. It predominantly today constitutes as capacity market. It is capacity market. You are blocking PPAs as capacity market. So today it is like that. So I leave it there as a thought. Let us discuss, let us hear others, and then we will come to some conclusion on the subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shai. I now request Mr. Alok Kumar to address the gathering.
Thank you, sir. I must congratulate Rakesh Nathji and R.V. Shahiji to having organized this webinar on this topic. And I see the interest is so high that we have 67 participants I can see on my screen. And again, also thanks for inviting me to speak first in this webinar. It's a very important topic. So, sir, I would like to share my perspective and what I think and why capacity markets are required in India and what changes we require. Sir, let me first begin why. See this, if you see around the world, capacity markets, or in a wider term, capacity remuneration mechanisms have been in vogue in those geographies where reliability standards have been very stringent, be US, Australia, or UK. So India is now have started talking about resource adequacy and LOLP. So India is now adding itself to that family, number one. Number two, the second driver for the capacity remuneration mechanisms is the growing uncertainty in both demand and generation. So in my view, there are three drivers. First is our desire to have better reliability of power supply, and in our endeavor to do energy transition, the consequences are growing uncertainty of demand and generation. To give an example, the NLDC report which Rakesh Nasa was quoting for May 2025 for non-solar hours, it gives demand variation as wide as from 200 gigawatt to 260 gigawatt. You can imagine the growing uncertainty in demand assessment because of seasonality. Seasons are more unpredictable. The penetration of electric vehicles, green hydrogen, industrial electrification, and data centers like this. So going forward, the political system will require increasingly stringent reliability, and power system professionals will be faced with much larger uncertainty in demand and generation, with variable generation going beyond 30, 40, 50%. So this is the context why we are talking of the capacity markets in India now. They are little different than what we have. I will explain it in a course of time. So what are the consequences? If either we don't procure, we don't have capacity, we will have blackouts. Or if discoms procure for extreme demand, the PPAs, they will be saddled with a lot of standard costs. Not only in India, some states had those. We can see around Bangladesh has a very huge contracted capacity of oil-based generators. They are being crushed with capacity charges. You can go to Malaysia and see their reserves are prevailing much higher. If you don't innovate your markets or the way you procure, either you will have blackouts or you will be crushed with the standard costs, and ultimately it will impact the tariffs. The system requirement is the resource. That's called resource adequacy. And resources required not only to meet energy requirements, we need to have adequate demand. That is the word which I would like to emphasize, capacity and demand, and also to supply the ancillary services. PPA holders are not mandated to provide ancillary services. That is the first difference. I will elaborate later. They are very cozy. They have no risk. Their full capacity charges are guaranteed, and there are minor penalties. I will just explain what are the penalties, how they differ in this. So we need to find a market-oriented solution if we need to meet the two requirements of reliability standards and avoid huge standard cost with one particular discom who has contracted the PPAs, the conventional PPAs. So talking about markets, classical example are energy only markets, what we have in Texas or Philippines or the main Australia. Theoretically, if energy markets are given full freedom to reflect prices, there is no need of capacity markets, because price volatility and price spikes can cover the cost of every generator who is in the system. But no government in the world, not only India, will allow those type of markets. If you see, many regulators across the globe, many governments, they bring in interventions which clip the full freedom of energy only markets. There is the problems of missing money and missing markets for the generators. Missing money means you have curtailed the spikes, so his revenue is being curtailed. And missing markets means solar may increase, the prices may come down so much in the day, the coal-based plants say that I can't dispatch, so I need PPA, and PPA means standard cost for discoms. So if we have to address the problems of missing money and missing markets, we need to see about capacity remuneration mechanisms. I will not say that capacity markets is the only thing. There are many versions of the capacity remuneration mechanisms across the world. Basic concept is to bridge the gap of the expectations of the investors to keep his investment viable, and what are the expected revenues from energy only markets. So we have terms like gross CONE, gross cost of new entrants, or net CONE, depending on the likely dispatch of the asset. So you can design a capacity remuneration mechanism around these two concepts. Basic requirement is to incentivize timely creation of flexible dispatchable capacities which are delinked from offset guarantees. And you have timely capacity to meet the new demand or to replace the retirements. The benefit of shared this capacity remuneration mechanism is that you have market-oriented solution. So this capacity is shared amongst the load-serving entities. They are not stuck with the standard costs, and they buy energy from markets as per their requirements. Not everything goes to capacity markets. I will explain it. But the last slice of 15-20% is a shared resource. System is happy, investor is happy through CRM, and costs are minimized beautifully. Examples are in Western Australia, they have a system of capacity value mechanism in which you take a reference technology like open cycle gas turbine or battery with solar, you draw out a benchmark price and a price curve which gives higher capacity payments to the generators when the system is having lower reserves. But if the reserves are higher, then this capacity value mechanism gives a lower capacity payments to the generators. So he plays around the market and he's assured that as the demand is growing, he will get his payments. Let me turn to on the other spectrum is capacity auctions in PJM. They have an auctions of 3 months, 3 years in advance, 1 year in advance, even 1 month in advance. So capacity remuneration mechanisms can come in different avatars. From CVM, because it's a smaller market, there is apprehension of power market, so they can't. Western Australia did not go for auctions, but PGM is a big market; they have gone for auctions. So for India, suitable will be more of auctions through capacity markets, not CVM. What is the India's policy landscape? We are not sleeping; we are doing our work. There was a report which was published in March 2023, and it was accepted by Ministry Power, and CA was entrusted to ensure its implementation. It was chaired by Secretary Power. It has representation from MNRE. It had Chairman CA, member CA. It had a Chief of Regulatory Affairs from CRC and 3 large states, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and Madhya Pradesh. They gave few recommendations. I will quote the relevant recommendations. In near term, it recommended introduction of 2-part bidding for the portal. The portal today is single part. Make it 2-part so that DISCOMs can trade their surplus capacities in the market. It recommended that between 1 to 2 years, go for standardized exchange-based capacity contracts for short-term trading and take steps to move to 5-minute based metering, scheduling, dispatch, and settlement. The system can optimize costs better if you move to 5-minute, and your flexible dispatch is compensated more appropriately if you move to a shorter dispatch intervals. The report recommended that in the period beyond 2 years, the long-term interventions are the regulators should move for long-term capacity markets be implemented along with market-based economic dispatch for ISTS thermal fleet and merchant capacities. Another policy intervention came in the last month when I demitted office in the June 23 is the resource adequacy guidelines. It moved from 5-yearly national strategic plan to annual assessment on rolling basis by NLDC, by CA, by states. So see the frequency, because demand has become uncertain, or planning frequency has become 5 years to 1 year. And it says DISCOMs must satisfy that they have procured enough capacity, not PPAs, enough capacities, 100% for the first year and 90% for the second year, so on. And in para 3.0, the resource adequacy guideline says they must contract capacities, not PPAs. The DSM regulations of CRC of 2024, the Regulation 9/7, Regulation 9 sub-Regulation 7, it has built in the penalties for the DISCOMs who do not procure capacities. And in case DSM pool is in negative, the cost of the ancillary services are to be allocated to the DISCOMs who are causing those imbalance have not procured capacities. CA has now finalized the structure for capacity credits, which is a building block for capacity markets in India. So it's quite good, but the question is, our apprehension could be whether it will lead to higher cost. No. I'd like to show you two slides. CA recently launched a expansion planning model called Stellar. Stellar has been run for Madhya Pradesh. So can I request Rawatji to show those two slides, please? Yeah, this model was run for Madhya Pradesh with 100 plus generators, with 150 nodes of 220 kV and above substations, one node for ISTS, more than 380 transmission lines existing proposed, and taking 12 representative days per year for next 10 years. And it also enforced the RPO trajectories. This model run is a very detailed presentation. I'll go to the last slide, what this leads to. Please go to the last 16th slide, Rawatji, slide number 16. This is a beautiful slide. It summarizes that by an optimized modeling and building sufficient flexible resource like battery, you can save up to 36,000 crores in 10 years, that is 6.3 of the cost. And the figure, the slide is busy. Zoom आपने स्क्रीन पे कर लिया, मैं आपको बोल देता हूँ. हाँ, the key figure is if you do your proper modeling, the coal capacity in 35 of Madhya Pradesh comes to 16.5 gigawatt instead of 23.3 gigawatt if you don't take storage capacities. What thing? That the model picks up the best configuration for the optimized supply, and you save 6.3 cost. It's a huge saving, but there is a catch. We had a round table only 2 days ago, and MD IEF was there, Mr. Goyal. He quoted some data and he said there is enough arbitrage opportunities for 2-hour battery in the market now. Same are our findings. We have done our own analysis, the same. But arbitrage opportunities are inadequate for 4-hour battery, which this system needs. This analysis needs 20 gigawatt of battery for 4-hour duration. So unless until you have the capacity remuneration mechanism, this flexible resource will never come, and you will never be able to save the cost. That is the key message I wanted to give, that flexible dispatchable resource brings system level benefits. So they need system level remuneration, not PPA based remuneration. They are not adequate, and they can take to DISCOMs to huge standard costs. I'll give you a few examples. Australia 2 years ago, it allowed batteries to earn capacity payments. Government of Australia brought a capacity investment scheme, and government guaranteed that the selected facilities would earn a given minimum revenue, otherwise government will chip in. The Australia moved to 5 minutes dispatch, and they introduced a good ancillary service market. US has long been implementing these capacity markets. PGM has a reliability pricing model, and capacity payments are a major revenue stream for the new capacities to come. California has enforced the resource adequacy mandates, and resource adequacy payments are the key revenue for the new generators. The system needs flexible dispatchable generators. India has also started moving in that direction, but not in a structured manner. If you see the battery storage tenders being floated by the states like Kerala is the last state. It has done a tender for 4-hour battery, 125 megawatt for 500 megawatt hour. It has come to a tariff of 4.2 rupees per unit. The system requires, because Kerala will get cheaper power if it pays that capacity. those battery tenders are capacity contracts, because battery developer is only mandated to bring battery when requires. He is not mandated to charge and supply. Our PSP contracts are capacity contracts. And the NVVN tenders about gas capacities for crunch period are capacity contracts. Why? We guarantee the gas-based generators that you make available your plants over and above the fuel cost. If you are deficit in revenue from market, we'll pay you from government kitty. So those are the capacity remuneration mechanism. Everything is not capacity market, but there are several capacity remuneration mechanism even in India now coming up. But we need a more structured markets, because NVVN tenders are ad hoc. Investors will not have confidence. We need a structure. We need a regulation. Now, I will briefly mention why PPAs are not capacity contracts. There is little confusion. In PPA, the investor has zero risk, whereas in capacity markets, risk is allocated between the developer and the load serving entity. Number one. Number two, under Section 62, you give them fixed cost payments. In capacity markets, the price of the capacity is discovered through market mechanisms reflecting on the reserve condition in the system. If reserve is tight, they will be paid more. If reserve is low, they will be paid less. So risk is allocated. We have made our developers so cozy and so risk-free. They just want PPA, nothing else. And moreover, as I said in the beginning, PPA holder generator is not mandated to provide ancillary services when the system requires. It's a voluntary for him. Whereas a capacity holder generator is mandated, otherwise penalties will be very severe. I'll come to it in a moment. So when you remunerate capacity based on availability, the cheapest technology will come forward, like gas or battery, not coal-based plants. Gas-based plants have low capex. They are the best for reserves because you have the minimum capacity remuneration mechanism. I'll give an example. In Australia, if a generator fails who has taken a capacity payment, what will happen? Not only his capacity credits will be reduced, there's a dynamic refund factor which can go up to 4 times. If the system was under stress and if he failed, he will have to refund 4 times the capacity payments. There's a difference between PPA and the capacity market. Capacity markets are very, very harsh. You take the capacity payment, but you will deliver, system is secure. And the shared capacity, there's no standard cost on the discoms because it's shared. So our resource adequacy guidelines also mandate a national level auctions every year by NLDC. That is the beauty. This ad hoc thing will not work. We have to bring annual auctions, 2 yearly auctions, 4 yearly auctions. Then the developer will have confidence to set up capacity or part of capacity for earning capacity payments, and balance he can take from market. Discoms need not take the full risk. In the end, I will only say capacity markets are not the panacea. World over, bilateral contracts, maybe PPA or bilateral capacity contracts, they cater to 70 to 80% of the demand. But last 15-20% is done through capacity remuneration mechanisms because it allocates risk in a very fair manner. And the essential feature of capacity markets are the standard contracts and preset frequency of auctions, so that bankers become comfortable. I fully agree with Shahi Saab. Our regulator has to step in and bring a configuration and structure of a contract and a frequency of auction. You can't, bankers will not come if you make it ad hoc like we have today. And very last thing before I conclude, capacity credit mechanism done by CA, we have to enforce. The CRC and SERC must get their act together and they must enforce resource adequacy obligations if you have to make our system reliable and cost effective. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alokji, for the excellent presentation. I think the participants were not able to see the presentation because of the size. I'll circulate your presentation to the various WhatsApp group on the power sector for the benefit of all the participants. Mr. Alok Kumar, since you will be leaving, can we take one or two questions if there are any? Anybody has any question from Mr. Alok Kumar?
So, Sudhir, sir,
हाँ जी, झा साहब.
sir, naturally the capacity market is basically required for the resource adequacy. There is no doubt, and this is the way of bringing the generator. But in all these countries, wholesale energy market is also running. A capacity market, time to every year, revolving tap, they give it. And do you feel in India, suppose today, basically what is the problem with resource adequacy? The states, discoms are not in a position to calculate, are not in a position of, and that's why so many things have been put in the DSM, CA is doing for them. Now in this situation, if you auction the generator, just close the eye, today we auctioning for after 3 years. We need 50 gigawatt, particular tap up. Of course, as on date, you are telling gas is the best, but I don't know whether gas is not there. Our whole generator is lying. Then I am finding only battery and the thermal. Suppose in the auction, do you feel that our cost will be less? Then we must go. A second thing, how the energy rate of this capacity generator will be determined through the bulk energy market, or will take the price of both in the auction tender, like we have done the ultra mega. We have taken one energy rate or whatever it is. I don't know how to determine it. These are the two things. I don't know how to go.
No, Jasa, very good question. Say we will have to start first from short-term market. As a recommendation is, long-term people will come only when they have confidence. You must start some auctions on annual basis by NLDC for a shortfall. So there are some merchant capacities you will develop confidence. Number one. Number two, you're right. Capacity markets cannot function in the absence of wholesale energy markets. As I said, the gross cone and net cone, I will again say net cost of new entrants. He will estimate that what he can earn from the energy the wholesale energy markets, and balance part he will put in the capacity remuneration mechanisms. So you are right. We need both, but in the absence of capacity markets, the system and one more point. This is the optics where the price will be lower. Don't go for a spot prices. Go for the system costs, because the prices for the last mile system resource will be very high, but it will make your system cost overall low, as I showed in the Madhya Pradesh example.
Thank you, Alok ji.
There's just one thing, sir. So what is happening? It's okay. Like the PGM has gone after 3 years, the regional cost capacity charges. Now here I just want to know, if short term if you go, 90% already have the PPA. You are left with the 10%. And naturally the tendency is, I have talked to some generator like DB Power, etc. They are preferring to for long term even at the lower cost, because of the price limit of 10 rupees, etc. They are not getting it because they are not getting the coal. They have to go up. In that way, do you expect in short-term capacity charge will come, then energy market will not be affected?
See, they are two different things. What I'm saying, you see the situation which Rakesh Nathji explained. Our system is in crisis.
Yeah.
If you have to pay higher prices to 5%, and if that brings down the cost of reliability in the system cost by 6.3%, let us go for it. So you have to think systematically, comprehensively. Don't think only on one parameter, what will cost in the capacity. Say capacity markets auctions for short term will bring some confidence to the merchant capacities, that here is the market which I can bid every year. So I'll set up 100 megawatt more next year.
Okay.
So nobody will set up a full plant. Please initiate it, that confidence will come, and then we will move. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you,
Good, sir.
Alok ji.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shah Saab.
I-
Very good
Both
question. Thank you.
Very good presentation.
Thank you.
Very good.
So can we,
Thank
may I
you.
I have
request,
a very
We-
short,
we-
sir.
we
I have a
need-
very short question. Yeah. So may I, sir?
Soni sir.
Yeah. So, sir, thank you very much, sir. Very wide canvas, very well covered. Sir, I was only looking for one word, and I would like to hear on that. Is, as you rightly said, it can lead to stranded cost, it can lead to underutilization, and associated issues. And where to draw the balance. So, in the resource adequacy, the term resource has come not, and you very rightly explained, it's not only generation, it's also load. It's everything together. So, in PJM, the auction which takes place, they have a demand response, megawatt, and that is the cheapest resource. So, shouldn't India first give us real thrust on demand response, last 1% of 1%, which is so expensive? We are flexible, we are frugal people. I would certainly like a
Soni Saab,
endorsement on that.
my response will be on 2 bullet points. Demand response, the track record that we can't depend wholly on it. For making a system reliable, we need both.
Yes.
Demand response can't replace the new flexible dispatchable capacity in system. That is it has been done nowhere in the world. We need both. I fully agree. Like in Australia example, the batteries were contracted by the system operator as a load. When there is duck curve, they were charged. So there was system operator say, look, you increase demand now, my system is in crisis. So it's a comprehensive treatment, but I will not recommend going only for demand response and neglecting capacity. Nobody has done in the world. It is very, very dangerous.
Soni sir, all the markets give the capacity markets have demand response as well as the capacity.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was
Thank
only
you.
coming to that only, sir.
No, we need both. Soni Saab, thank you
Yeah.
for this point.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
May I
you.
now request Mr. Ajay Telgaonkar?
So I will take leave. Rakesh, I will join the maybe after 5 minutes. I'll join from car.
Thank
I will
you.
listen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Ajay Telgaonkar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, first of all, to India Energy Forum for inviting me to talk on this, speak on this important subject. And it is great honor and privilege to speak in the presence of stalwarts who have inspired and contributed so much to the sector. So I'll just share my slides. I have, I think, just 10 or so slides. Is it visible?
No.
It's not there.
May I ask Mr.
Yeah,
Rawat?
I think, yeah, that would be fine. That would be fine.
Mr. Rawat? Mr. Rawat? So you tell Mr. Rawat when you want to change the slide. Yeah.
Yeah, it's come.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So, Rakesh Nath sir and Alok Kumar sir has already touched upon the need for capacity market. I will just like Rakesh Nath sir has said, and then Alok Kumar sir has said, that it is not only about capacity market, but it is about how to have enough capacity. So, I will use this presentation in the context of both. How to have enough capacity, either through bilateral contracting or through a capacity market, so that we have enough capacity overall as a country and we don't face the issues that we are facing now. So in my presentation, I will go through the rationale, which has largely been touched upon already, but I will just go through one slide on that. And what are the possible pathways by which we can do it? There's no fixed model. There's everywhere, all the countries have adopted different models, but we can think of what we can have it, and then there are some thoughts on that. So we have recently seen some capacity crunch. We have done impressive area capacity addition, but largely not available in the non-solar hours, where we are facing problems. Problems mainly we see in summer months and post-monsoon months. Summer months, obviously, demand is very high, and hydro is low at the beginning of the summer. And the post-monsoon, we have problems of wet coal, our wind is going down, our hydro is going down, and demand is still significant. So these are the two critical periods when we face the problem. Just to give a data that in the 24 financial year 25, we had 15% of the time when the price was at the cap, 10 rupees per kilowatt hour. And last year also it was 20%, this year it is 15%. So, and then in how to manage that? To manage that, we have taken some drastic measures. Like, for example, uh, we have done some short-term contracting for gas-based plants. For last 3 years, we have been doing it. This year also, we have done it for 6 months. We have been deferring plant maintenance. Then we have invoked Section 11 provisions to ensure availability for imported coal-based stations. Last year also for the gas-based stations. So these are some drastic measures that we had to take in recent past, and all this indicates is that we are short of capacity. Next. And this realization had come earlier also. It is not that something which has been noticed now. So in that response to that, Ministry of Power had made some rules in which there was a provision that for the resource adequacy guidelines. And these guidelines were issued in July 23. Just to give an idea that what this guideline says, that there will be a national long-term plan which will be prepared by CEA. And this will be for 10 years period. And when the DISCOM will have to go before the start of the year, maybe 6 months before that, in November this year for next year, to show that they have tied up 100% for the next first year and 90% for next year. And there's also some kind of a broad prescription about how much of it should be long term, how much of it should be short term. And noticeably, you can see that there is no, in the first 2 years, as far as meeting the contribution to national peak is concerned, we cannot rely on power exchange. Just to give an example, for example, if DISCOM has, let's say, a peak demand of 10 gigawatt, and at the time of national peak, its demand is 8 gigawatt. So for 8 gigawatt, it has to demonstrate 100% tie-up in the first year and 90% for next year. And for peak demand of 10 gigawatt and other energy requirement, again, it has to go in the same thing. It has to go to commission and show that it has enough tied-up capacity. But in that case, they can also procure from power exchange also. So idea here seems to be that short-term bilateral contracts are slightly more reliable as compared to power exchange, because at least you can have these contracts in hand when you go to commission. Whereas in power exchange, the maximum window available is 3 months. So when you are going in November for next year, showing the reliability, then you may not have this case contract. You can only presume that it will be available, but it may or may not be available. So this is the basic error. So we had recognized the problem. We had made the guidelines, but do we have the tools to comply to these guidelines? Next slide, please. So presently we have what type of options we have for procurement. We have long-term and medium-term PPAs which are based on two-part tariff. It is more or less a capacity type of contract where there is a flexibility of dispatch. Then we have short-term procurement. All short-term procurement up to 1 year, whether through power exchange or bilateral, is a single part tariff as on today. So it is essentially where we don't have kind of assurance for capacity. And we have long-term PPAs for renewable energy. And these are also
somebody has not kept his mic on mute. Noises are coming.
Himanshu to mute कर. Mute your mic.
अच्छा आपके फ्रेंड जो थे 15 फ्लोर में किसमें थे 15 टावर
So long-term PPAs for RE also are single part tariff, because
आपकी जो फ्रेंड थी
what you are contracting is the energy delivery for the entire year based on CUF. There are some penalties for less or more delivery, but it is essentially energy. There is no assurance of capacity per se, because the sources itself are intermittent and variable. Yeah. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Mr. Rawat?
Doing fine.
Yeah, please go to next slide. Yeah, so I was talking about that. Do we have enough tools to meet the requirements which has been come out of this guidelines? So as I said, that creation of new capacity will mainly be through long-term PPA generally. These have to be contracted 5 and 6 years in advance. Uh, uh, and then after this, we have tied up with the long-term PPA. A course correction may be required in between, maybe 3 years or 4 years before the actual year starts. And in short term also, we may end up having some surpluses or some shortages. So some mechanism is needed to correct that position. And if we see that our resource adequacy guidelines, there is also a mention that year before, a short-term national resource adequacy plan will be prepared by an LDC, and it will indicate that which are the discoms which are not having enough capacity to meet the requirement, and then they will inform the SERCs, or there will be a national level auction to facilitate balance capacity. So even this national level auction itself has presently not there. So we have only long-term and medium-term contracts to meet the capacity requirement, and not enough tools by which we can correct our position and all that, because there is a lot of reluctance. So the main theme here is that resource adequacy and capacity markets go hand in hand. If we have to ensure resource adequacy, we must have some tools in the form of market, so that we can enable exchange of capacity, maybe creation of some capacity through these mechanisms. Next slide, please. So, and we have seen our driver, that is basically inadequate capacity is our driver here. Similar things have been observed globally also. We have already talked about ensuring resource adequacy. I think we have also seen in the Mr. Alok Kumar's discussion that energy-only markets have their limitation, because sometimes they are not able to provide enough revenue, and this leads to missing money problem, and so new generators are reluctant to come globally. I mean, not in here, but globally, and sometimes they even retire their plants if they are not able to make enough money. So, and then renewable has added another dimension to it, because they are not very, they are not sure of capacity provider, and that is why we need some kind of capacity market which can give us assurance for reliability. So again, I will say to it that mainly investment will come to long-term PPAs, but these additional options which we provide through maybe 3 years ahead options or 1 year ahead options or long or medium-term procurement, they will only add to the investment landscape. I will just give an example. For example, if we have to depend only on long-term PPAs, then, for example, a DISCOM may be reluctant to sign a very long-term PPA because of changing dynamic scenario. But if the DISCOM is sure that all is not lost, if I end up having more than what I have, I will get another opportunity maybe 2 years, 3 years down the line to somehow, offload this capacity at least for part of the year or for some time before I actually need it. So then DISCOM will be more comfortable for going for long-term PPAs. And similarly for generator also, for example, if I have a generator, I have a LOA of 1200 megawatt, I will go for 800 megawatt, 2 units of 1600 megawatt, and think that even if I have a long-term PPA of 1200, I can use this 400 megawatt, wait for some opportunity for long-term PPA, or else at least I have an avenue of capacity market where at least for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, I can manage at least some revenue. So this enhances the investment climate. Next slide, please. Alok Kumar sir already talked about it. There was a report. It was headed by Alok Kumar sir himself, and the group had submitted the report in March 2023. And this had, many chapters about market development, but one of the chapters was on resource adequacy and capacity contracting. So what I will be speaking today, mostly drawing from those recommendations, but at the same time, some additional thoughts have emerged after that, and based on discussion with stakeholders, though a formal proposal is yet to emerge, but I can include those thoughts in my presentation. Next. So one possible framework for capacity contracting could be that, as I said, one is long-term capacity contracting. It will be bilateral capacity contracting, maybe 6 or 7 years in advance, so that there's enough time for construction of new capacity. Then there could be 4-year advance options for 1 year delivery, and then could be a corrective option, which is 1 year in advance. And then lastly, there could be a residual correction up to 1 year in advance, but these are bilateral. So first one and last column are bilaterals, whereas second and third columns are perhaps auctions. That is one possible model that is possible. Next. We'll take one by one all these options. So long-term, the report itself has said, and we should continue to rely on long-term and medium-term PPAs, because essentially the investment will come only through these. Worldwide, that is the same experience. Even where energy markets are functioning, they are essentially based on, in the backhand, there is a contract, and then they go to energy market, and there is kind of CFD kind of mechanism. So 60 to 70% capacity will generally come through a long-term PPAs only. And again, this has to be competitive procurement. Tariff policy already says that all the DISCOMs' future procurement will be through competitive bidding. And for that, we also already have two models. What we earlier used to call case 2, we call it now DPFOT. And earlier we used to call case 1, we call it DPFOO. So these are procurement under Section 63 of the Electricity Act. They will continue to be there. Other capacity of contracting options, as I said, will only enhance. They will only supplement this. It will lead to some more investment than what otherwise would have been possible only through long-term PPAs. But at the same time, there is need for enhancing flexibility of long-term PPAs. The long-term PPAs presently are very rigid in a sense that, first of all, the term of 25 itself is a inflexibility, in the sense that then DISCOMs are very reluctant to enter into such a long-term PPA because of changing dynamics in the sector, which is changing so fast. So as a first step, we have already recommended and given some new standard PPAs, which are for the term of 15 years. This, I think, 12 to 15 years PPA will be first step in the improving flexibility. Other options are like, for example, there should be a option to substitute the supplier in case the original supplier is not able to supply, at least for a short period of time. Then there is also flexibility to sell in the market if the buyer is not scheduling the power on day-ahead basis. So all these flexibility will give assurance to both the parties, and then will enhance the acceptance of long-term PPA itself, which is at present is lacking. One option could be that we can have a technology agnostic bids also, if it is so, if the RE studies so indicate. For example, if the RE study indicate only peak time shortages, then obviously we will have to think of only those resources. But otherwise, in some cases, it is possible to have technology agnostic bids also. And these long-term and medium-term PPAs will be scheduled bilaterally, unlike some other Western markets where the power is generally scheduled through the market only. We perhaps will have to rely for some more time on bilateral scheduling, because this gives an assurance to the DISCOMs that they will get the power when it is they require it. Next slide, please. The next set of mechanism could be 4-year ahead advance auction. This will be an auction where it is a collective kind of auction where both the buyers and supplier can participate. And then the collective auction has one advantage, that it brings out more efficiency as compared to bilateral auctions. For example, if we see that in case of deep portal, when a DISCOM invites a bid for, say, supply of 3 months, then 2 or 3 or 4 suppliers, they submit their bids. Until the results come out, they are stuck with that. Then if there is another tender, then they cannot participate because they are already given the validity and all that. So bilateral contracts, bilateral auctions, bidding procedures have their own limitations. They do not bring out that efficiency what we need. So collective auctions is definitely a better way of conducting these procurements for 1 or 2 year delivery. then there are two possible ways which we can think of. One is that in these options we can come out only with the capacity charge, and then energy can be routed through DAM, where the energy price will be discovered. Worldwide experience indicate that in these kinds of models, since the generator is assured that he will get significant part of his revenue from the energy market also, so the capacity charge discovered is generally 15 to 20% of what otherwise it would be. So then he recovers rest of the revenue to energy market. That is one possible model that we can have. But the issue in this could be that, like I said earlier, DISCOMs may feel that they may not get full power, particularly because now when the price touches 10 rupees per kilowatt hour limit, then there is rationing. Not only price is high, they may be wary of the fact that they may not get even what they want. So because of that, perhaps another option could be that we do these auctions based on capacity charge and energy charge together. We do the bucket filling and then allocate the pro rata capacity to all the procurers. But it has its own problems and limitations because the contracts will get divided into so many small parts. But these are perhaps these two options which are there at present. And then as we go forward, we may have some more options emerging. But these are my initial thoughts on how this market could be. Next slide. Then there could be a 1 year ahead corrective option. Earlier option was for 4 year ahead. Now we are talking about just 1 year ahead. And this is basically emanating from the guideline itself, the RA guidelines, which says that NLDC will carry out short-term resource adequacy assessment, and they will find out which are DISCOMs which are lacking or deficit in the capacity. And then they will either inform SERC or there will be an option. So this is that option which could be in compliance to those guidelines. In this option, I feel should be purely based on capacity charge discovery. Once we have enough capacity, we are assured of enough capacity for a country as a whole, then we can think of that actually the price discovered in the energy market also will be reasonable. Of course, it will take some time. There will be some transitory issues till these guidelines take into force in full force, and then till we have this capacity contracting mechanism. For 3-4 years, we may have some shortages in these markets and prices may be high. But overall, when we achieve all these objectives, when we have enough capacity as a country as a whole, then the pressure in the energy market will be less, and the chances of hitting the ceiling of 10 rupees per kilowatt may reduce substantially. So then this option can work where we can have only auction based on capacity contract, capacity charges. Next. Then these are again options for bilateral. But these bilaterals also will have to be done much before the DISCOM goes to SERCs to show adequacy. That is well before November. So in this case also, one option, like the report also says, would be a standardized, for example, monthly capacity-based contracts where there are two-part tariff. And these prices can be discovered again through bidding in the power exchange. Other is like deep portal, where each DISCOM can also have invite bids. And perhaps one way to go should be that standardized contracts should go to power exchange and the specific or peculiar needs. For example, if a DISCOM says that I need from 15th June to 31st July or some odd period which is not being covered, then you can have a non-standard product and then it can go to deep portal where again prices can be discovered. Here also scheduling has to be bilateral because then DISCOM will be assured that whatever he has purchased, he will get that energy also commensurate with that. And one final thought is that when we do these options, obviously we cannot ascribe the technology in that because these options are purely based on capacity contribution from those things. And then we are sensitive, and not only we are sensitive, worldwide there is sensitivity to emissions. And therefore, one option could be that while auction can go on, those are emitting more than a certain limit which we prescribed in these auctions, there can be penalty adder. But the penalty adder is issued that it will lead to some collection of money and then there is a creation of fund and then all those issues associated with the fund. So one perhaps cleaner mechanism could be that we ask these generators who are emitting more than the limit set to make it good by purchasing carbon credits through the carbon market. This will ensure that we are not only energy, we have enough resources, but at the same time, we meet our carbon sensitivity also. I think these are my slides only. I think with this, I will end my presentation. Maybe later on, if there are questions, or even now, if there are questions, I can take it, or later on, I can. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ajay, for explaining to us beautifully why we need a capacity market and broad framework, what you think is practical for the country. May I now request Dr. S.K. Chatterjee?
Yeah.
Dr. Chatterjee,
Good
thanks for
afternoon.
joining. You are traveling, I think.
Yeah, sir, can you hear me, sir? I mean, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Fine. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Outside, sir, special thanks to you for inviting me to this important discussion on this important topic of capacity. Of CERC. I don't have any presentation, but I have some broad observations on this whole concept. First, the context, some broad contours of the capacity market as I understand, and what I feel would be relevant for India. So, first, the capacity concept of capacity market is not new to India. I, in fact, joined late, but could hear what PPAs that we are in India are on capacity contracts. There are issues about the PPA, which I also agree, but then, in my opinion, the capacity contract, the fundamental of the capacity contract, as has emerged in the Western market, which definitely stems from that famous missing money problem, was that these Western, especially the US market, was dependent solely on the energy only market. And that led to the missing money problem. And they had, the capacities, the investors lost interest. And they started thinking in terms of the capacity market. And reliability also was an issue which got added. Now, before we talk in detail in terms of what the capacity market structure and design should be, it is important for us to understand in the Indian context what the drivers are. Is it the missing money problem? Is it the reliability problem? Is it a combination of two? So that's the starting problem, and I think Sajay and also earlier Alok sir, which his presentation, which I could see towards the end, highlighted aptly, and I fully agree that the driver in India is not the missing money problem. The driver is more in terms of reliability and resource adequacy. So the whole concept of the capacity market, in fact, is a subcomponent of the overall concept of the resource adequacy. We in India, the policymakers and the regulators have been working resource adequacy framework. There is a lot that needs to be done at the state level in terms of the right kind of capacity, the resource adequacy framework, which is to be developed by the distribution companies, approved by the state commissions. And then the whole issue about the enforcement of the resource adequacy, which in turn will lead to the development of what we understand as the capacity market. So that was the first context in terms of what are the drivers for India. And as I repeat that it's not a missing money problem. And in fact, their capacity market has been only about a 1.5 years, half decades old. Ours also, the PPA, in my opinion, are nothing but capacity contracts. We have also the whole concept of capacity remuneration that assure the investors of payment of capacity charges. You in a way secure investment. You try and enlist the interest of the investors in making investment, which was not there in a missing money problem. But rest of the things in terms of the kind of structuring of capacity contracts or PPAs that we have had is something which needs a revisit. But I would not agree that India is totally new to this concept of capacity market. Rather, the FERC regulators have been trying to understand the kind of power and the capacity contracts that we have developed here in India. And also not to talk about, when we talk about capacity contracts, we should not refer to only thermal contracts, where we have the hydro contracts also, which are long-term power purchase agreements, and there the contracts read with the regulations of CERC ensure availability of the hydro capacities during peak hour. So that's so we have a lot of variants. There are others, but I have always been saying that they have, especially US, had the problem of missing money. We have in our PPA the problem of assured money problem. In fact, we called assured money problem, and that is where I echo the thoughts of Alok sir in terms of the whole concept. Now, a couple of broad contours of the capacity market which I have studied and we have been studying at length. First, the capacity contract design. International experiences were shown, but I will try and summarize based on my understanding what the international experiences are on the capacity contract design. You have like three broad categories, and there are other variants which could be put under one or the other of these three. One is what is called the capacity obligation. The second is capacity auction, and third, the strategic reserve for reliability kind of an option. Capacity obligation is a decentralized form of capacity contract. CAISO is one such example. It's not a centralized procurement by the system operator in CAISO, or for that matter, France also has a limited form of the capacity obligation. So our resource adequacy framework is by and large premised on this, that you will have one resource adequacy framework prepared at the national level, based on which you will have resource adequacy framework at the state level, and each load serving entity, DISCOM in our language, will have a obligation. So that obligation they will meet by procuring energy, by procuring capacities in their own way. Ideal option is for these distribution companies at least to procure it through centralized procurement at the state level. And if such procurement happens at the central level, they should be on behalf of the distribution companies. We should not trade on the same path as we are witnessing in case of the solar projects, where prior consent of the DISCOMs were not taken, and that's why today possibly we have so many capacities which have come, contracts which have come, but we don't have the PSA. So second is the capacity auction, which is centralized. And we must remember, we have been discussing all that, but there is a fundamental difference between the capacity obligation and capacity auction. Capacity auction, largely you have, again, in PJM, you have rather 4 of the 9, ISOs or RTOs in US have this capacity auction mechanism, which is centralized. And why, we cannot go strictly as per that, because that kind of a centralized auction, capacity auction, is best suited for a market design which is based on or premised on centralized dispatch. We in India do not have a centralized dispatch as in these 4 markets or in these 9 RTOs or ISOs that we talk about in US. So there you have New England ISO, New York ISO, MISO, as well as PJM. PJM also runs. I mean, it's in fact called a reliability kind of a reliability RPM. They call it reliability pricing mechanism. So third is the strategic reserves or reliability option, as I said, where you have some examples where you actually procure. This is something which is directly linked to what we call the ancillary services, that is the reserves, and that is procured centrally by the system operators in places where they are. So capacity obligation, I repeat, which is decentralized. One example is CAL ISO. Capacity auction, which is centralized and actually best suited for a market design, which is based on the centralized dispatch. The strategic reserves is something which can pretty well work in any kind of a market design, because this is something which has to be procured by the system operator. Now, third component, one was the driver, second was the capacity contract design. Third is the resources. Who are the resources? I heard Mr. Tooney ask question. What are those resources which should participate? Very simple answer is that those who are in a position to offer firm capacities. So I fully agree. Worldwide we have, and Mr. Rakesh Nath also mentioned that DR also has been participating. It should be technology agnostic. I mean, we should not be very prescriptive in terms of the resources or the technologies which could participate in whatever design, and in that you'd automatically have DR will come in a big way, in my opinion, that biggest of the big. That is why, I mean, you need to decide. I mean, as I said in the second bullet point, which is the capacity contract design, whether you are going in for capacity obligation, capacity auction, or strategic reserves. So the third element is where, DR will come. So the whole design, auction design, could be in such a way. Fourth point, in my opinion, in terms of the broad contours of the capacity market, is the duration. International experience show its duration is for a maximum of 3 to 4 years, hence for another 3 to 4 years. So, and there are old and new capacities which could participate. Those concepts of net cone and all that is something which is already there. But what is relevant for India on these 6 points is what, and also the most important thing in the Indian context is the is what we call the auction design. First that I talked about was the contract design in terms of obligation, auction, or strategic reserves. Now I'm talking in terms of the auction design. Auction design is very critical to understand, given the kind of market design that we have. Auction design, by auction design, I mean, do you invite bids only based on capacity charge and leave the capacities to fend into the market and recover their energy charge from the market? That is the whole concept of net cone, which Alok sir was explaining. But I'll try and give my perspective in the Indian context, whether and to what extent this whole concept is relevant in India. The second is, can we have capacity charge and the energy charge put together as the bidding criteria? And third important under the auction design head is the issue about whether these capacities should come with or without scheduling right. These are the typical issues which would vary depending on the kind of market design that you have. And against these 4 or 5 things that I talked about, I'll just try and give my perspective on what is the way forward for India, what could be the way forward, or what could be the design for India. Now, in Indian context, as I said, the capacity obligation, we are already working on the resource adequacy framework, and the resource adequacy framework casts or seeks to cast, as yet it has not taken off in the way to the extent that it should have. Capacity obligation is something which will be cast on the load serving entities of the DISCOM. So it will be by design decentralized. But when I say decentralized, I say the obligation would be decentralized, but procurement could still be centralized, at least at the state level. And if procurement is done at the national level through some central agency, we should be very cautious. We should first seek the of the distribution companies before any central agency goes in for any kind of capacity contracting. There is no denying the fact that if you have centralized procurement, you will you will end saving a lot in terms of doing that. Now, second is the strategic reserves. These are the two things: strategic reserve for reliability option for ancillary services. That is where you can have in India centralized procurement on lines of what we have seen in the West, especially in US, in terms of the design. So there you can have some quantities which would be required for reserves requirement, and the reserves requirement could be procured centrally by the grid operator, by Grid India, and there the bid could be only based on the capacity. You don't need to bid based on capacity and energy charge. Energy charge, when these resources are called upon by the system operator, they will be paid energy charge based on the market clearing price of the dam or the RTM, as the case may be. If they are not called by the system operator, these capacities should be allowed to bid into the market and recover their energy charge. So that could be a plain vanilla, rather from the first one, which is the capacity obligation, which in my opinion should be the obligation at a decent. Maybe part of that, because the whole concept of long term, medium term, and short term that Mr. Ajay also highlighted. I mean, after you have decided on your resource adequacy and the capacity obligation, how much should you go in for long term? Should you go 100% long term, leaving no scope for medium term and short term procurement? So there may be part of that obligation could be 10% to 20% of the obligation could be carved out for the Grid India or at the national level to be procured through the capacity option. So it could be a combination of capacity obligation and centralized auction, and there the scheduling rights and dispatch rights, the fourth component of the contour that I was talking about, becomes very relevant. In India, we cannot, like most of the Western markets, especially they have a centralized dispatch model. So you can think of capacities which are contracted, their capacity charges, which is the net cone, gets allocated to the load serving entities, and it does not matter for the DISCOMs or the load serving entities whether they have the scheduling right or not, because everything is getting dispatched centrally. But in India, where we have a decentralized market, we don't have a centralized dispatch model as yet. We cannot, in my opinion, we have been studying at length, we cannot simply copy paste that model from the US, because you have to, the DISCOMs would not in India, their psyche, given the kind of experience that they have historically about the capacity contracts or the power purchase agreements, they would not agree to pay capacity charge without any scheduling right. It's as simple as that. This is one very clear experience that we have gained, having been in the sector, and I'm sure all of you are more experienced than mine. So if we talk in terms of the capacity market design that they have, that in my opinion would be limited to that reserves procurement and part of the capacity obligation procurement, which could be. But another important point, which in fact is a matter of wholesale market design, which is a different subject altogether, is that even in that capacity obligation model, My recommendation is that the distribution companies, load serving entities could have the scheduling rights, but not the dispatch right. That's a larger question which is being debated, and off late, at least my realization is that in a power system so rich and heavy in firm power, with a RE rich power system, you would need some sort of dispatch which is centralized, while scheduling rights could be there with the load serving entities because they are paying the fixed charges. The dispatch rights could be centralized at the state level, at the regional level, at the national level. That's again, as I'm saying, is a different subject altogether. But to and also in terms of the duration, the fourth or the fifth component of the capacity market design that I understand, here in India, again, we can't go in the way the West has gone for 3 years, 4 years. We have to, for new capacities, we have to give minimum tenure of about 12 to 15 years is what the general understanding is. Otherwise, you won't get it. Last but not the least is what we call the secondary market or the short-term market here. I mean, there also you have. So when you do resource adequacy and do the impose capacity obligation on the load serving entities, you will have the load serving entities or the DISCOMs having procured capacities on long-term basis, which they might not be needing all time. So there would always be surpluses and deficits of capacities, quote unquote, capacities. So that short-term market, or internationally they call it secondary market, is what is the real need of the hour. So along with this whole concept of capacity obligation, capacity auction, and reserves, strategic reserves procurement, we would also need to evolve this secondary market or the short-term capacity market, which in turn will increase the depth of the wholesale market. I will stop here in terms of my initial remarks, and if there are questions later, I'll revert. Thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. Thank you, and thank you for joining even when you're traveling from Calcutta. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Before Mr. Alok Kumar will be leaving shortly, there is a question from Mr. Himanshu for Mr. Alok Kumar. Mr. Alok Kumar, can we take the question from you? Mr. Alok Kumar, are you on the line?
Yes, sir. Please, yeah.
Yeah, so
please. Yes, sir, I'm there. Please go ahead, sir.
The question says, whether capacity charge of 2.8 lakh per megawatt per year without VGF is financially viable for the best life of 10 years to 12 years with C2 and considering the grid fluctuation that may be imposed. So whether this price of 2.8 lakh per megawatt per enough without VGF is viable.
This is the call which developer has taken, and we were having a discussion only 2 days ago. The battery prices have declined by almost 50-60% in the last 24 months. So it is a question whether the developer has procured some battery cells in bulk, and it is the economics, and he wants to enter. It's a question of market strategy, and it is because once he has quoted and there are penalties and guarantees of performance, I think it should be viable. But going by the general trend, this type of declining charges are turning out to be viable. I can only say that.
Thank you so much. So may I now request Mr. Rohit Bajaj? Mr. Rohit Bajaj.
Good afternoon, sir.
Mr. Rohit Bajaj is Joint MD, Indian Energy Exchange. Mr. Bajaj, you have a presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So is it, am I audible? And
yeah, it is visible.
Okay. So thanks, sir, for having me here. This is one very, very important and relevant topic today, because we are dealing with energy transition, and then we are facing a lot of resource adequacy challenges. We are seeing our prices hitting the cap price of 10 rupees so often, which is indicating of the fact that there is some deficit in the system. and we must deal with that, and probably capacity market is something which we must consider at this point in time. So a lot has already been said by all the esteemed speakers, and there are just few points which I want to add here. I'll be brief, and then I'm not going to repeat those points which has already been covered. Let me quickly come back on the issues pertaining to present system. When we say the current capacity contracting which is being done in the country today is decentralized, it is bilateral. So what sort of issues we are facing? So one thing which is coming out very prominent now is the contracting is done for base load requirement. But all the discoms today, none of these discoms, they have got base load deficit. So on one hand, we are allowing or we are doing contracting for base load requirement because of the framework that we have today. On other hand, sharing of contracted capacity amongst the discom is not possible. So they have to buy full, and when they don't need it, they cannot share. So what we have seen in the trend in the market is many of these distribution companies, they do banking of the overall capacity that they have, and in terms of they convert it into energy and then enter into banking contracts. Now, banking is not very efficient way of dealing with energy market, or you can say transition of energy from one entity to another. So I think this is something which we must solve when we are talking about or debating on the capacity market front. Second problem is we are adding a lot of RE capacity. Now, because of a lot of RE capacity, we have seen solar time prices have come down. It has come down drastically year-on-year basis, but there is acute deficit during the evening hours, which again refer to the same thing that even if capacity contracting is required to be done, probably it is not on the basis of RTC, it is not on the basis of base load, it has to be done on the basis of time of day sort of arrangement. I have just a minute. My slides are changing. Can you see this next one now?
Yeah, we can see.
Thank you. So there are different, as mentioned by all the speakers, there are different capacity remuneration mechanisms which are there in the global market today. The first one, where we also have a similar thing, not exactly same, but quite similar, where we have energy only market without scarcity pricing. So ERCOT, Texas is one place where there is only energy market available, but with the help of energy only market, they are meeting the capacity addition requirement also, resource adequacy requirement also. Mr. Alok Kumar said initially that this is one way of doing it, but this probably is not the most efficient way, because quite often this gives very high price signals. In fact, when you have growing economy like India, where the demand growth is going to be there between 5, 6, 7% going forward for next decade, having energy only market probably will not serve the purpose, because there would be growth and price signal will take its own time to come to the developer, and then they will take time to create capacity, and we will end up in a situation where for long period of time there would be acute deficit, and that capacity will take a lot of time to come. So probably this is not something which we should go ahead with. And again, there are inherent problems, because the energy pricing will increase. All the participants probably they have to end up paying the same price, and then there is lot of concerns even with the government. One more thing here is energy only market works in those situations where you have a very deep market. In India, we know that the market size is less than 10%. With such a shallow market, having energy only market with scarcity pricing probably will not work for us. So what can probably work is possibly the second option, which is centralized capacity addition. This is very popular. In fact, in PJM, base residual auctions are being done, corrective auctions are done on a very frequent basis. Then we have MISO, UK, Ireland, and some part of the Europe also. This phenomenon is very popular. So some of the advantages which are there, the mechanism is very transparent. Since it is centralized, there is a regular time frame for which the auctions are being done, and the price discovery is transparent and competitive. It is known to everyone. Then there is another provision here in the centralized capacity auction. ISO also keep arrangement of backstop procurement. Now this is important thing, because even with the centralized capacity auction, we may end up in a situation when there are certain shortfalls. So ISO takes this responsibility, and then if they have this capacity available, they try to schedule this capacity as and when it is needed. There are certain disadvantages also in this particular thing. It's very complex. Generally, we have seen it is done in a place where it is centralized dispatches are being done. And this gives a lot of it increases role of system operator in a big way. So DISCOM role will reduce. All the curves, demand curves will be prepared by ISOs, and on the basis of those demand curves, on the administered basis, the capacity procurement is done. So it is more of a centralized phenomena. There are advantages to it. There are disadvantages also. I think in our case, the scheduling is partly done centralized, and then we have voluntary markets. So probably this may not be the only option, or we have to take few things from here, and then we must also analyze what other options are there. Moving on to the next type of capacity remuneration mechanism, which is voluntary auction. And voluntary has got two components. It can be done on a decentralized basis, and it can also be done on a centralized basis. So when it is done on a centralized basis, as a DISCOM or as a load serving entity, you have option of participating in that, which is a voluntary option. And otherwise, you can do outside the market in a 100% decentralized manner, the way it is being done today. And majority of these contracts which are done are on bilateral basis. Now, this is very simple mechanism. And this is one option. This option is used when there is no mandate of regulation or market rules for the resource adequacy. If those rules are not there, people go for this. There is a classical case of MISO and the European market, where majority of the countries, there is a voluntary market, and they opt for such mechanism. So this is a very simpler one, and then it provides some amount of transparency. When it is done centrally, the transparency level is little more. When it is done decentralized, then it is little on the lower side. The price in the voluntary market may not be very meaningful. If the overall size is not high, if these transactions are done in silos, one at a time, then probably the signal which is being given to the market is not very meaningful. Then the last option is strategic reserve option, and this is done generally by system operators. There are numerous cases where, as an exception, they earmark certain capacity, they buy certain capacity, keep it with them as a strategic reserve, and as and when needed, they use this for the purpose of dispatches. Now, this is again, you can say more towards sort of an ancillary thing where they are injecting this power, and then finally the causer has to pay for it, and it is disbursed to all the participants. If I have to summarize this in a table, you can see here on the top in the table, I have covered all the CA ISO is not there, but all major ISOs are there, because CA ISO is 100% bilateral. But otherwise, if you see, ERCOT is energy only market, where there is no capacity auction which is happening. But MISO, ISO, NE, NYISO, PGM, all we have in all these places, we have capacity auction mechanism available. MISO is voluntary, all other are centralized auction. Everywhere you have option of entering into a bilateral market, bilateral contracts. So everywhere people are using these bilateral contracts of varied tenure to enter into those contracts and taking capacity outside the market also. Now, forward procurement period is up to maximum in what we have seen is up to 3 to 4 years, where 3-4 years is a good time for creation of new capacity. It is designed purely on the basis of that. But again, all the rules which are there, all the earlier period which has been given, are keeping in mind most of the conventional capacity addition. But now, if we are going for more solar capacity or renewable capacity, probably we can think of reducing this 3 years also to something like 1 to 2 years. And the resource commitment period is maximum up to 5 years. So there are cases where 1 to 6 month commitment is also there, which is more for seasonal requirement, year-on-year basis it is being done. But in case of a couple of ISOs, there is a 5-year commitment period is also there, including PJM. Now, as I mentioned, all the last three where it is centralized auction, it is all mandatory. Now, if we look at the European Union, there are 8 member states which are very active in capacity mechanisms. One is Belgium, then Finland, France, Germany, Ireland, Italy, Poland, and Sweden. There are 2 types of mechanisms which they follow. One is strategic reserves, which we discussed, which is generally done by system operators. Finland, Germany, Sweden is following that practice. Remaining 5 are sourcing their power through centralized capacity mechanism. I think on the basis of these inputs, whatever we have today, because there are so many global functioning models which are there, and this has been there for long time. There has been a lot of experience which has been gained in the recent time, and on the basis of that, now we can look at all the options which probably will work for India. So this is what I could figure out on the basis of this, and then we have I have tried to summarize it. Now, first thing that we can do in India is we can start with short-term rolling capacity contract. Now, this could be up to 1 year duration. And as we have seen, a lot of energy contracting is done for the seasonal requirement because of the diversity. There are so many states where they have surplus capacities available, and then there are so many states because of their own agriculture requirement, they go for energy procurement. In fact, in past, we have seen many cases, some certain distribution companies, they procured energy at a very high price, but could not able to use it. They could not use it because the forecasted demand, the demand they were anticipated, that never came. So they ended up selling the same power. They bought power at 8 rupees and then come to the market to sell the same power at 5 rupees. So they incurred huge losses. Had the capacity contract option been available to them, they would not have bought energy. They would have gone for the capacity contract. So this is one thing which can easily be done. And this can be done again on the power exchanges because we have this mechanism available. In fact, today power exchanges are also into reverse auction, which we are doing for 3 months energy contracts, which are being done, which is very similar to deep contracts. So it is very easy to adopt. This is something which can be started on immediate basis. Now here, what we are suggesting is first right of that energy would be with the buyer. So let's say I am a state, I went to the exchange, procured energy capacity for let's say 6 months, then first right on the energy would be mine. And then this surplus can be sold in the power exchange also. Similar to what is happening in the case of centralized generating station, URS power, where whatever is not being taken by the original beneficiary, that has started to come on the exchange. Similarly, whatever surplus is there, that can come on exchange. So there is a capacity contract with first right of refusal with the original buyer, and then the same thing to be dispatched through market. Now, having said so, the good thing here is when it is coming to the market, nothing is getting wasted. So there is no capacity which is not being utilized. Everything will eventually come to the market. And the causer, or you can say the buyer, where there is a deficit, the state which would need this power, they would be in a position to buy. But there are certain provisions which we must enact before going for such thing. Unless we have strict penalty provisions, if there is no penalty for non-RA compliance, then probably this will not work. And first of all, we must include such contracts as an input to the resource adequacy working also, because then if somebody is entering into a 6-month contract, then they should get credit of this on their resource adequacy working side. Now, there is the certain speakers mentioned that there is a difficulty for getting lending for such products. Here we are not talking about new projects which will come because of this. New generation capacity will not come. There is about 10-15 gigawatt of merchant capacity which is there today. That capacity probably will be participating in the tenders and this auctions through exchange, and they will get there some missing money problem solved. They would be getting certain thing through capacity contracting, and remaining they can earn through their energy selling, which they have been doing for a long time. But one thing is there, if you have such contracts, over time liquidity will start to increase, and slowly it will start to give confidence to even the lenders, even the developers, and people will keep this particular aspect in mind when they will create new capacities, whether on the merchant basis or on the some spare capacity, which probably they will create for under the long-term contracts. Now, the second option is, which is very popular in US, we have seen PGM and other places, where the DISCOM can get into capacity auction, where the period is 4 years. We can always change it to 4 to 5 years. And these are standard capacity contracts. Why standard? Because unless these are standard, they would not generate enough liquidity. And if the liquidity is not there, then the price discovery won't be competitive, and then we would miss out on the advantages of doing it centrally. Then it would be as good as doing it bilaterally, and then the transparency part would be avoided. So it has to be standard, and standard means we need not go for RTC contract. We have to have contract which would serve requirement of peak, and that peak should also be defined. It should be standard peak. because if we have multiple peaks, different peaks, then possibly again the liquidity will get compromised. So this is one thing which can be done. And to complement this, there can be short-term rolling capacity contracts. So there is one contract which is done for 4 to 5 years. And then on top of it, there is 1 year contract which is there. Where suppose I have entered into a contract and now I realize that my capacity, I have excess capacity. I can go to this short-term rolling contract and sell some of this part, some of the surplus capacity that I've procured and then get compensated. So these things possibly is something which can work in our case, and we have enough maturity in the market. People are used to dealing with auctions, and they are used to even source power up to medium term for 3 to 5 years through D platform. So I think this is something which will be easily accepted in the market and will be appreciated by the stakeholders. On the challenge side, again, it has got the similar challenge: who would lend, who the developer confidence of creating that capacity. And answer again is same: unless we start, nothing will happen. Once we start, it will start to give signal, and when the developer will get to know that the 25 years contracts are no more available, then probably they will get to the drawing board, try to figure out what sort of returns they can get from the smaller contract, and then be competitive, and the liquidity will come. The last thing that we have in mind is we can also do tokenization of capacity, which means that, let's say, as a state, I am confident that for next 1 year, 2 years, I have got these many hours where I am meeting my resource adequacy guidelines, and still I have some surplus available. Now, what I will do, there would be a registry in place, probably operated by somebody like Grid India, where I'll submit my calculations, convince them that this is the capacity which is definitely on the higher side, and I am not going to utilize this. And then it is also I'm also meeting my RA guidelines. Then probably this additional capacity will get converted into certificates. Now, the credit will be given in the form of certificate, and then this certificate will become a tradable commodity. Now, power exchanges have been dealing with RECs and energy saving certificates, which are where liquidity has also increased over time. And if we start to do that, and there is a central registry which is being done, which is being operated by some statutory authority, then probably this is something which can also be implemented. But again, the bottom line is penalty for non-RA compliance has to be there. Unless that is there, there is no incentive for anybody to come to the market and then do the procurement part. Second is over a period of time, we have seen that load shedding has reduced. Now, discoms, there are much awareness on the customer side also. And as and when we are not going to tolerate this, more such things would be needed. So tokenization is one option which definitely, it has worked in certain parts, certain countries. There are few examples which are there, and we can always look at these things. Now, RE sources, new technologies will be incentivized by doing this, and there would be many innovative solutions. So, BESS is going to play one important role. So BESS tokens would be available tomorrow. Solar tokens can be available, different technologies, and ultimately we have to make it technology agnostic, so that it is just a capacity. It is just a generation capacity. There is no underlying technology which is there. So these are some of the suggestions which I think can work for us. A little bit tweaking probably would be required when we will be sitting to create the comprehensive framework. Thank you. That's all from my side.
Mr. Bajaj and Mr. Chatterjee, just I want to know this. Am I audible? Chatterjee sir, kaise hain Chatterjee sir?
Sir, great to see you, sir.
It was a good presentation, but some doubt is coming up. Of course, all the other countries, whatever you named, PJM, etc., they have basic gone for auction for the attract the investment, all that is. And actually, if today what India needs is, of course, battery, so storage, like thermal also. The long term looks to be okay. You auction it, even centralized, like SECI, PPA signed. If PPA is the problem, fix the resource adequacy, all state what they need, and then we can auction it, everybody will sign it. This looks to be workable, I don't know. But one thing we are adding more than this other countries, 1 year rolling plan, this thing. In today's situation, as Mr. Bajaj said, first right, second right, see, this type of thing will not workable. We know in CRC how much problem we faced to allow the NTPC generator to dispatch. Nobody will buy the capacity on their cost, and then allowing regulator to dispatch to others. And then saying you will take the 50% charges, etc. That's why, if today say, as Mr. Chatterjee told, first right, what was there, it is there should be like that. What I feel. Secondly, what I feel, if you leave this is to attract investment. If you go for 1 year rolling, the first right type of things is not there, your energy market going to impact because the power is available very less. And that also capacity is booked somewhere. Like I remember that IEF was coming to us, so many people are coming to us, they are saying people are turning into the long-term PPA, 5 years, 6 years. And that is impacting the IEF business. And that's how you have to think whether we should think of 1 year capacity. I don't get, maybe tomorrow it will be surplus. That I doubt today, if you are going, the cost will go very high. Energy rate will also go very high. It will impact.
Okay, Jhasab, can we, Mr. Chatterjee, are you planning to bring any staff paper on the capacity market in India?
Sir, we are working on, couple of things that I said is something which we are working extensively. It's not only the capacity market, the whole market design. Sir, one leaf that I left in this was the scheduling, decentralized scheduling and centralized dispatch. Around this whole concept, we are working, and sir, we should be, yeah.
So we can expect something from CRC in 6 months' time?
Yes, sir, obviously 6 months.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So if there are no questions.
No, I think Mr. Suni has raised his hand.
Right, sir.
Soni sir, chaliye.
Soni sir,
yes.
You have a question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, very nice discussion, sir. One thing which clearly comes out is that after the resource adequacy, the contracting, whether it should be centralized or decentralized, that's a debate. More or less, it comes down that centralized is more cheaper, but then decentralized the way. Sir, I leave that aside. But what Dr. Chatterjee mentioned was very, very powerful statement, and that has to come out very clearly is that scheduling would continue to remain decentralized because each state is responsible as a load serving entity and for all such things. But yet, dispatching can be centralized as a thin layer. So normally when we say scheduling and dispatch, we say it in the same breath as if both have to be done by the same entity. But then if we can make this difference, it will sort out many issues of games played with trembling hand, extra capacity, wrong generation schedule. All these things will get resolved. So I would say that this should be linked together and really projected in the country as a whole, that scheduling and dispatch are two activities. Dispatch can be centralized by the system operator. Scheduling can still be done by the load serving entity or DISCOM in our case. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think one thing comes out very clearly that we can initially start with a 1 year market. And once the confidence develops, then we can step ahead for a longer duration market.
One issue, Rakesh Nathji, which emerges from this is that the investors and the new capacity cannot come on 1 year, 2 year, or 5 year contract. And the financial institutions will also not be comfortable, as Mr. Shahi said in the beginning, that how they will be comfortable to finance these projects which are coming only on 1 year or 5 year guarantees.
Yeah, I agree. No, I'm saying a beginning has to be made. Beginning
The
has to be
beginning,
made.
beginning means you cannot make it from a new investments.
That's right. Beginning from the existing capacity.
That will
Right.
have that may have adverse impacts. Let
Yeah.
us see. Let CRC is working. We'll see. Let CRC.
Okay. Mr. Shahi, may I now request you to give your final comments? Shahi Sahab.
Thank you, Rakesh. I think it has been a very absorbing discussion and very, very rich, very excellent presentations. And why not so? Because we had all eminent personalities, practitioners, knowledgeable, highly knowledgeable practitioners. And therefore, it is very good. In the beginning, I made a point that all of us in the profession have been concerned that we are somehow not getting away from the PPA based and which is predominantly capacity market, capacity based contract. Though Alok, I don't know whether he's here, he tried to make a fine distinction between PPA based capacity and capacity market. But the fact is that if you are contracting 1,000 megawatt, whether you take it or you don't take it with 80% PLF, whatever it is, and you are asking to dispatch, if you don't ask them to dispatch, still you pay for the contract for the fixed charge. So it's not a big, there could be a minor difference here and there, but predominantly it is that. We saw the presentation of Ajay from CEA highlighting different tools and different instruments that we have. We had the presentation from Dr. Chatterjee, explained the various things. He also mentioned centralized versus decentralized. Rohit made a presentation. I think they are all excellent points. But I would like to make, based on all what I have heard, that you can give any title, but when we are trying to give a picture of trying to do something as a policy instrument, let us not create a hype about it. Because there is a tendency in the system, and particularly at the state level and DISCOM level, that if you are trying to do something, the rest of the things get halted. I remember in 2011-12, the government Ministry of Power started working on revised guidelines on the power procurement, bidding guidelines. I mean, my good friend Jyoti Arora was there, and she was struggling, and everything stopped. The state thought, no PPA, nothing, let us wait for that. And that took 4 years, 5 years, I don't know whether it came, it didn't come. So therefore, let us not give a new title, capacity market, and say something is happening and which halts all other actions. According to me, whatever I have heard, this capacity market is not very much different from what Indian power sector has been used to so far. See, today also, renewable constitutes only about 12 to 15%. Balance is all either hydro or thermal and all. And that is mostly on the capacity. I mean, you do the PPA on the basis of capacity and you pay for it, whether you ask for dispatch or you don't ask for dispatch. So the name apart, I don't think we can. Second point I would like to make is that many of our friends, and we are all familiar, all of us keep in touch with what is happening world over. Situation in India, particularly with the type of states and central relationship, the political dimension all put together, is entirely different from what is happening in other countries. I have also done the Google search on this capacity market in about a dozen countries. This is absolutely not applicable to us. Absolutely not applicable. Think about our own experience and make changes. That is a different matter. But just because something is happening somewhere and therefore even we try to adopt or adapt, I think this cannot be a recommended course of action. We have a matured number of years of experience of trying to integrate the whole country, and there is no country in the world and no part of the world has done the type of exercise that Indian power sector has done. From 50, 60,000 megawatt to 400,000 megawatt, all on national grid. I mean, you heard the problem of USA when they have blackout and they did not. At that time, we came to know USA is not having a national grid. We have a national grid today. So think of your own problems and work out a solution. Absolutely, experience outside is not at all relevant to us. Absolutely, we can learn some knowledge, but that is not relevant to us. Absolutely, I think. Within the existing framework, all the presentations I have seen. I have seen the presentation of Alok also. He gave the example of solar and battery storage. Those things have started happening. That type of tender is happening. People are being asked to propose hybrid solar and wind and electricity storage. So that is already happening within the existing framework. We should educate all states on these things, what can be done. They can have PPA, they can have short term. At one time, we used to have 25-year or 1 year. Now we have different baskets of trading arrangement that we can do. Regulatory Commission, Electricity Regulatory Commission allowed that, and you have flexibility. So those instruments are available today, and they can do their own. What is required is, I chaired the task force of Rajasthan. What was required is procurement strategy, and we saved 100 crores every month. So instruments are available, your policy things are available, little bit of change here and there, but putting it in place, that's it, that should be done. And that is which of the states are weak in adopting or adapting or understanding, we should do the dissemination. We suggested to Indian Energy Exchange to also provide that base. Some others can also do, CA can also do. So that is another third point we would like to do, that your existing framework takes care of the desire that you have, the desired objective that you have. Within the existing framework, you can devise your instruments, use those instruments flexibly. In what way you can standardize your procurement or policy or the system, keep sufficient leeway for every type. You have 1 year, you have long-term, short-term, medium-term exchange and all that. Some of the changes that can be made, as Rohit mentioned about the exchange operations itself. A point I hear loud and clear, I must tell you, all of you, regulatory uncertainty and policy uncertainty can be killing. This Indian power sector saw banks abandoning power sector in 2000, 2001, 2002. So kindly also listen to what banking sector is thinking and the financing sector is thinking. It is not that we professional technocrats, bureaucrats all put together, we can make the policy and they will. When we did the policy, each policy we shared with all the banks. Ultra mega project policy started with the banks, and they said, yes, we are with you. And therefore we had no problem. So therefore, regulatory uncertainty or policy uncertainty may come in the matter. At the national level, regulatory uncertainty has been criticized. A thought process is going on in the government, whether regulatory mechanism in every sector that we have provided is itself becoming highly difficult to proceed with. So I think it is not perhaps allowing the market to develop. A power sector market can be also in handicap. So that is also an important thing. Resource adequacy. Resource adequacy, I mean, these are all phrases that have come. What is the national electricity policy? I shared this with Central Electricity Authority people, that national electricity policy for 5 years, and then review, sort of the rolling plan sort of situation, provides us the obligation of creating this. DISCOMs have told us loud and clear. I have interacted with a large number of DISCOMs that this is too big an expectation from us to give the demand projection. We don't know what is happening. Suddenly a metro is coming, suddenly a manufacturing is coming, suddenly something else is happening. How do we know what will happen? I think that is something where we have to find out, like good economists, we have to find out which are the demands and derived demands and what is happening at the government of India, national level, and how it is impacting the demand. Fortunately, we have national grid. So at state level, national level, that we have to do. Putting resource adequacy as the total responsibility, inputs from the DISCOM, that is too much to expect. And on that basis, I don't think we can design the national electricity plan. That is, in a way, trying to escape from the responsibility of creating a reliable national electricity plan. That is the responsibility, statutory responsibility of the, and they should interact with various ministries in the government of India, with industry ministry, with the steel ministry, with also tourism ministry, and all will have some idea of what is going to happen. So that is an important resource adequacy. Cannot be. We definitely should take some input from DISCOMs, but that cannot be the burden of the. Then the question came during discussion, reserve. There are certain states, that's a good concept. If you remember, regional plans of NTPC used to have 15% unallocated power. And I remember in the winter season, we used to give from that 15% more power to Srinagar, Jammu and Kashmir. And similarly, in crop season, we used to give more of this to 15% to Rajasthan in the crop season. So I think that reserve can be done at the national level, that so that it is available based on the hardship of the, and that procurer, and that should go through present process, and procurer can be government of India, procurer can be state government. They keep certain reserve and take care of this type. So that the point that Alok was making, that sometimes the price becomes too high, too costly, etc., etc. Like they do in the grains. They do in the grains the same thing. And we used to do it right in the power. I remember different seasons we used to reallocate, sometimes 500 megawatt there, 200 megawatt here, we used to reallocate. So that is one concept that we can definitely do. So I think another point I would like to make, I don't think this is the time today of trying to do anything which tends to be branded as over-centralization. I don't think we can afford over-centralization. The type of system governance that we have, I think we should give the policy. Over-centralization, whether it is procurement or anything, will not be acceptable, and according to me, is not desirable either. I think, but we have learned a lot. Let us further discuss about this, in what way it can be. But I think one thing should be made clear by Regulatory Commission or by Ministry of Power, that these are things to improve. This in no way should be perceived as a major policy change that is going to happen, and which should in any way, directly or indirectly, impact the present process of things happening. I'm saying so with full sense of responsibility. We have seen it in the past. People stop going ahead, saying something is coming from the government of India, something is coming from CERC, therefore hold it. And that holding it has cost us in the past very badly. So I think that message should be very clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for very nicely concluding the proceedings of today and covering practically everything. May I now lastly request Mr. BP Singh to say a vote of thanks?
Sir, after Mr. BP Singh had proposed the vote of thanks, I would request 1 minute for sharing some information with the participants. Singh Sahab ke baad.
Thank you very much, sir. Let me at the outset thank Shri Rakesh Nath ji for bringing this subject on the webinar and introducing the subject very ably. And we had a great discussion on the subject. My sincere thanks are to Shri R.V. Shai sir, who gave the insights on our power sector, what actually is happening, and whether our existing market itself holds the key to the capacity market itself, where we have a PPA-based capacity is already tied up, and to what extent we need to tweak the policies to have a more dovetailing of the capacity market, what we are talking about, rather than building a new policy itself. I'm also thankful to the other speakers, Shri Alok Nath ji, Shri Ajay Talangangur ji, Shri Chatterjee, and Shri Rohit Bajaj ji, giving their insights and their thoughtfulness and comparing what exactly is happening world over and to what extent we can bring in those policies and to dovetail into our system. Thanks to everybody, and thanks to all the participants. We had almost, I think, tick to about 72 participants at one stage. So thanks to all the participants who really participated very ably and even had interacted during the session. That's enough.
Thank you.
Thank
Sir,
you.
may,
Do we close? We close down.
sir, may,
Yes,
sir,
yes.
may, sir, may I?
Yeah, Majan साहब आप कुछ कह रहे हैं?
So our next program of India Energy Forum was scheduled to be a non-virtual physical program on 19th of May on the subject of renewable energy. And Popli ji was spearheading it with the help of Malti Goyal ji. We will take a call whether it needs to be rescheduled because of very sad demise of Popli Saab. And for that, we will take a decision and shortly inform you. But I would request the help and cooperation and assistance to Malti ji for enlisting support of the speakers and participants from all our colleagues in India Energy Forum. This is what I thought I'll share with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. We close?
Yes, sir. We close now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
very
all
much,
of
sir.
you.
Thank you.